Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 530 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jeanelle Slade. A big move out of Washington tonight. President Trump announces new guidelines to open the economy. It will happen in phases and it will happen slowly. Now, those guidelines revealed after a day of discussions with world leaders, members of Congress, and state governors. CBS's Skylar Henry is in Washington and joins us from outside the White House tonight with the very latest. Skylar.
Hey, Jeanelle, good evening to you. Well, the president just wrapped up his press conference a few moments ago, and CBS News has obtained audio from the president to the nation's governors, essentially saying that you are going to call your own shots when it comes to reopening their respective states. But the Trump administration, as you said, have put out a set of guidelines that are coming out in 3 phases, slowly getting Americans back to work.
President Trump released new guidelines intended to ease states into reopening.
America wants to be open, and Americans want to be open. A national shutdown is not a sustainable long-term solution.
The guidelines are divided into 3 phases. Phase 1 maintains strict mitigation, while phases 2 and 3 soften those restrictions. The president presented his plan in a conference call with state governors, who will decide when to implement each phase.
Governors will be empowered to tailor an approach that meets the diverse circumstances of their own states. Every state is very different.
The president also held calls with members of Congress, inviting dozens from both parties to join his task force for reopening the country.
President Trump lashed out at Democratic leaders on Twitter, accusing them of playing politics over the Paycheck Protection Program, which he says is out of funds. The relief program guarantees forgivable loans to small businesses who keep employees on the payroll.
We need people to stay attached to the companies that they were working at prior to the COVID crisis.
Democratic leaders continue to negotiate additional funding with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, demanding fixes to the program and more money for states and hospitals.
Now, Montana Senator Steve Daines has been named to the Workforce Council to reopen the country, along with other members of congressional leadership. He said that he is looking to prioritize public health, workers, families, and other parts of small business. Jeanelle.
Now, Skylar, we're also hearing a little bit more about the president's discussion with governors today. There's a report in the Washington Post that mentions Governor Bullock, our Montana governor, asking the president about testing. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, what that's in reference to are those Abbott machines that are essentially rapid testing kits to get rapid results for the COVID-19 results, I should say, and that they essentially get your results in anywhere between 5 and 13 minutes. And of course, that is a highly sought after test nationwide. Now, last week, the White House said that they wanted to get those tests out to communities that are more rural and obviously areas in the South as well. But as you mentioned, Governor Bullock said that he has actually received the machines for the Abbott machine, but he hasn't received the testing kits for them. And obviously that goes into just the prioritization of who gets what test when and who determines how many tests are sent to each different state and each different community.
All right, Skylar Henry live from the White House tonight. Thank you so much. Montana Governor Steve Bullock quick to respond to the president today, saying early actions across the state helped slow the virus, which will allow us to resume our economy as much as normalcy as possible when the time is right. In fact, I have already begun discussions with public health and emergency response officials and business leaders in my state on a responsible, measured, and gradual path forward to do so. Wyoming Governor Mark Gordon has said return to normalcy will be long and a very slow process. Well, as the state announces 11 new confirmed cases of COVID-19 across Montana, MTN News has learned the virus has taken another life here in our state. That death confirmed from officials out of Toole County, which now brings the total deaths there to 4. The latest numbers on the Montana COVID-19 map shows a total of 415 confirmed cases and 7 deaths, but again, we know tonight that total has reached 8. In Wyoming, the latest numbers show 296 people have tested positive. 2 people have died there. Yesterday, Governor Mark Gordon instructed all state agencies to cut spending until the end of the budget year. He directed them to freeze all positions and halt general contracts above $100,000. Wyoming's budget is in place until June 30th. Well, across the nation, unemployment numbers have passed 22 million. Here in Montana, people out of a job are starting to see state benefits kick in, along with the temporary $600 a week federal benefits check. Well, this week, Montana began paying the extra unemployment insurance provided by the CARES Act. So far, some $30 million has been issued to Montanans through federal and regular unemployment claims. But still, this additional insurance isn't being distributed to the self-employed. Under the legislation, anyone receiving unemployment benefits is eligible for the additional $600 a week stimulus payment. That money is earmarked until July. Well, many who are out of work and waiting on compensation might feel uneasy about what to do until those benefits arrive. Experts say here are some ways to cope. Keep applying for unemployment benefits, although lines and wait times may be long. Tap into emergency savings you may have, but remember that saving is still important. Look for ways to cut back on expenses, pause memberships, and cancel subscriptions. Contact your mortgage lender and student loan provider for hardships and take advantage of relief programs for rent, utilities, and prescription drugs. Well, to help students, the Montana Board of Regents is temporarily adjusting admission requirements for the public universities. The board held a conference call this afternoon and agreed to waive the requirement that all students apply to a 4-year university have to submit an ACT or SAT score. Now, this change would allow students to prove proficiency in math and writing through their grade point average instead of a standardized test. These adjustments would apply through September 2021. Leaders say it strikes a balance between maintaining quality and making sure all students still have a fair shot at the school of their choice.
We pride ourselves on being an open access state. It's one of our key priorities as a system. However, we want to make sure students are prepared. And I believe that this method of applying to our campuses still meets that commitment to college preparation.
Now, students will still need an ACT or SAT score in order to qualify for some state merit scholarships. Well, some inmates across Montana who've committed nonviolent crimes have been released due to COVID-19. The Montana Supreme Court has denied a request to release even more. Last month, Chief Justice Mike McGrath sent a letter to courts asking them to review what prisoners could be released. Disability Rights Montana and American Civil Liberties Union attorneys argue that state prisoners with disabilities are at risk. The brief states that some of the actions at jails, prisons, and houses of correction have been inadequate. On Tuesday, the court disagreed, saying the governor's directive and CDC interim guidance best addresses the current crisis. Attorney General Tim Fox says those running jails and prisons take care of inmates.
They have done very well in protecting Montanans, and particularly inmates and detention staff. So we were somewhat surprised that the ACLU filed a lawsuit just a few days ago on behalf of Disability Rights Montana, seeking to force the state of Montana to release literally hundreds of inmates who are in jail or prison. The Montana Supreme Court issued a unanimous 7-0 decision denying the petition for extraordinary writ filed by the ACLU and really pointing out that what they had alleged and claimed was not supported in fact or in law.
Now, the Yellowstone County Detention Facility currently holds 368 inmates. Now, that's down about 25%. In Montana's crowded U.S. House race, Democrat Kathleen Williams rolls in some impressive fundraising numbers. Williams raised $475,000 for the first 3 months of this year. That's almost twice as much as anyone else in the contest for the open seat. Her total for the campaign is now $1.6 million and still has $1.2 million left in her accounts as of March 31st. Republican Matt Rosendale is the second highest fundraiser in the race. He took in $248,000 from January to March, and for the campaign has raised about $1.3 million. 5 other Republicans are in the contest. The Republican raising the second most money this year is farmer rancher Joe Dooling out of Helena at $42,000. The only other Democrat in the race, Tom Winter of Missoula, raised $73,000. Now that seat is open because incumbent Republican Greg Gianforte is running for Montana's governor's seat. Ballots for the primary election will be mailed to voters in 3 weeks. Well, if you've been downtown and driven 32nd Street lately here in Billings, you may have noticed a little more color on the back of the YMCA building. This is all part of a completely donor-funded renovation of the Wise Youth Center. The additions will include an indoor playground, an ADA-approved outdoor playground, and a lighted outdoor area for increased safety. The back wall features outdoor scenes inspired by Montana, as well as the themes of some of the outdoor playground animals. Underground Culture Crew is 2/3 of the way through its work and has donated the final third of its time and supplies. And we'll, of course, be checking back with the YMCA for updates and progress. We'll still ahead on tonight's 5:30 news. During the current stay-at-home order, your pet may be acting a bit differently. We're going to find out why. And in sports, Scott highlights why one MSU hoop star decided to stay on campus during this unprecedented time.
And coming up in weather, Billings woke up to about an inch of new snow on the ground. Since then, it's all kind of melted. But what's coming up next? We'll have the answer in a few more minutes.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 5:30 news on Q2, Montana's news leader.